All right, adventurers gather round. We're diving deep into something pretty cool today, playing characters with totally different viewpoints. Big thanks to LitRPG Reads and that fine fellow Paul Bello for the article. This topic really hit home for me last week. I was running a game and things got a little heated. It was a typical haunted tomb exploration, standard adventuring stuff, right? But we had this super devout cleric all about healing and preserving life, and then a rogue who was, let's just say, a little less concerned about collateral damage. We get to this puzzle room, and the only way to open the door is to trigger a trap with venomous spiders.
Oh, yikes.
The cleric was horrified, wanted to find another way, but the rogue was impatient and focused on the loot. Just shrugged and said, spiders, we can handle a few creepy crawlies. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a dagger. The other players were stuck in the middle trying to find a compromise. We ended up having this incredible in-character debate about the ethics of sacrificing a few spiders to get to the treasure. It was a fantastic role-playing moment. Really got me thinking about how to handle those clashing viewpoints in a way that's fun and respectful for everyone. And that's where Paul Bello's article comes in. It's like a guide for navigating those situations where characters with different beliefs, values, and motivations have to work together, or at least try to.
What I love about Paul's approach is that he breaks this complex topic down into smaller steps. He gives practical advice for both players and dungeon masters. He starts by talking about understanding the foundation of a character's perspective.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just say, okay, this character is lawful, good, or chaotic neutral. You've got to dig deeper, explore what shaped their worldview. He calls it the viewpoint framework matrix. Encourages players to think about things like family background, cultural upbringing, religious beliefs, personal experiences, even traumatic events.
Interest.
Like, imagine a character who grew up in a strict military family. They'd probably have a very different view of authority than someone raised by, say, a band of nomadic rebels.
Definitely.
And those different perspectives can create amazing role-playing opportunities. Imagine a knight and a thief forced to work together.
Okay.
The knight is totally appalled by the thief's disregard for the law, and the thief just sees the knight's by-the-book attitude as naive.
I can see it.
But as they adventure together, maybe they start to see things from each other's point of view, develop a grudging respect, maybe even become actual friends.
That's what I love about RPGs. It's not just about fighting monsters and getting loot. It's about exploring human interaction, the clash of ideologies, the potential for growth and change. And Paul's article really digs into that. He encourages players to move beyond just surface-level stuff and explore the reasons behind their characters' choices. He talks about understanding a character's motivation.
Absolutely.
What drives them, their goals, their fears, their deepest desires.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Those motivations should match the character's beliefs and values.
Oh, I see what you mean.
If you've got a character who's motivated by power, but says they're a noble paladin, their actions won't line up with their words. It throws the whole thing off.
Breaks the immersion.
Exactly. But when a character's actions make sense based on their worldview and motivations, it's so much more compelling.
It feels real.
Exactly. Think about a character motivated by loyalty to their family.
Okay.
They might make choices that seem risky to others, even reckless. But if they're doing it to protect their family, it makes perfect sense.
You're right. And that's what makes playing characters with different opinions so fun. It's all about finding those points of friction, those moments where characters have to face their differences and make tough choices. It's about the potential for conflict, but also the potential for understanding, growth, and even finding common ground in unexpected places. Paul's article then moves on to decision-making. Because sometimes as players, we make choices for our characters based on what we think would be cool. More than what our character would actually do.
Definitely. It happens all the time.
Right.
Especially when you have a great idea for a dramatic scene or some crazy maneuver in combat.
Totally.
But if that goes against your character's personality or motivations, it just feels wrong.
It's jarring.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine a super stoic warrior suddenly resorting to lies and tricks for no reason.
Doesn't make sense.
Not at all. Paul emphasizes that characters' choices should always be based on their own internal logic. If they do something out of the blue, there needs to be a believable reason, something that fits their worldview and their motivations. Sometimes the best choices are the tough ones, the ones that make characters face their own beliefs and make sacrifices.
I remember one time I was playing a rogue, super selfish, greedy, classic rogue, right?
Yeah.
We were in a dungeon. Things went south. One of the party members was badly hurt. Part of me, the player, wanted to grab the loot and run.
Classic rogue move.
Right.
Yeah.
But then I thought about my character's backstory, about the one person who was kind to him when he was growing up. And I realized, despite all his flaws, he wouldn't leave someone behind, especially not in that situation. So instead of running, my rogue risked his own neck to save his friend. And it was one of those rewarding moments I've ever had in a game. It felt true to the character, even if it wasn't the best move strategically. And I think that's what Paul is talking about here. Those moments of conflict, choices that challenge your character's beliefs, force them to grow. Those are the moments that make RPGs so memorable. So we've talked about a character's perspective, their motivations, and how those things affect their decisions. But how does that actually play out during the game? How do characters with different viewpoints interact? That's where Paul's sections on interaction methods and expression styles come in.
Right. It's about how characters communicate their viewpoints through words and actions.
I like that.
Like a gruff warrior might just grunt and shake their head if they disagree, but a flamboyant bard might go on a whole speech about why they're right.
That's great.
And these different ways of expressing themselves can create some awesome role-playing moments. Imagine a tense negotiation. You have a diplomat who loves to use subtle persuasion, and then a barbarian who prefers a more direct approach.
Oh, I can see that going wrong.
The clash of their personalities is just as entertaining as any fight scene. Paul even has this interaction matrix. It outlines different communication styles and how they might show up in social situations.
Interesting.
It's a cool tool for figuring out how your character would handle a conversation, a debate, or even just a small disagreement.
Sounds useful.
Yeah.
It's like a cheat sheet for those social encounters.
Oh.
But it's not just about the words. It's the little things, too.
Yeah.
The body language, tone of voice. All those things can say a lot about what a character is thinking.
Right.
Think about it. Someone who really believes in their cause, they'll stand up straight and talk with conviction. But someone who's unsure of themselves might fidget or avoid eye contact.
Yeah.
Those little details bring the characters to life.
Absolutely. And when you have characters with totally opposite viewpoints expressing themselves in these different ways, it creates a kind of energy, makes it so engaging.
It's electric.
It is. Like watching a play. Each player is fully embodying their character. But here's the thing. Portraying these different viewpoints isn't about winning an argument or forcing your ideas on others.
Right.
It's about creating a space for respectful dialogue, a place to explore different ideas and debate them without being rude or attacking each other.
It's like even if your paladin hates the rogue's methods, they can still try to see where they're coming from. Have a conversation, not a shouting match.
Exactly. And you know what? Sometimes those conversations can lead to surprising outcomes. Maybe the paladin sees that the rogue's way of doing things has some merit, or the rogue learns there are some lines they won't cross.
Yeah. And those realizations, those little shifts in perspective, that's what makes role-playing so great. It's not about following a script. It's about letting the characters grow and change through their interactions with each other and the world around them. Which brings us to another thing Paul talks about. Growth patterns.
Yeah.
Characters are like real people. They change over time.
Of course.
Learn from their experiences. Face challenges that test their beliefs. And come out of it different.
Right. But that growth shouldn't feel forced or fake. It has to be natural. Like a progression that happens over time.
I see.
Like think of a young noble who's never really been outside their castle walls, goes on their first adventure.
Okay.
They might start out super naive and idealistic.
Yeah.
But then they encounter the harsh realities of the world. Their perspective changes.
They toughen up.
Right. They might become more cynical or maybe more compassionate. Seeing all the suffering and resilience out there, it's those little nudges, those aha moments that change their view of the world and guide their actions.
And sometimes those changes in perspective can lead to internal conflict.
Absolutely.
So like that same noble, now they've seen some things, they're tougher. But maybe they start to question the traditions they grew up with.
Ooh, that's good. Internal conflict adds so much depth to a character.
It does.
It's the struggle between what they believe and how they feel.
Yeah.
What they want versus what they're supposed to do.
Like having two voices in your head arguing.
Yeah. Do you stick with what you were taught or make your own path, even if it means going against everything you thought you knew?
Heavy stuff.
It is. And those struggles can show up in different ways. Maybe the character gets quiet and broody, always questioning themselves. Or they might lash out.
Right.
Take their frustration out on others. Those moments make them vulnerable. Give other players a chance to connect with them on a deeper level.
Yeah, like a close friend offering comfort. or a rival trying to take advantage of the situation.
Exactly.
It's about seeing those raw emotions,
Mm-hmm.
the character's true self. That's what makes them feel real. And when you combine that internal conflict with those different points of view we were talking about earlier,
Oh, yeah.
that's when things get really interesting.
It is. Makes for some truly amazing moments at the table.
But obviously when we're dealing with these sensitive topics, beliefs and values, internal struggles, we need to be respectful. That's something Paul emphasizes in his article.
Right. He talks about creating a safe and inclusive space at the table where everyone feels comfortable sharing their character's point of view, even if it's different from their own.
Right.
It's about understanding that different opinions make the game more interesting, and disagreements can be just as engaging as a big battle.
As long as it's respectful.
Of course.
Like even if you're playing a villain,
Yeah.
you don't have to resort to stereotypes or offensive language.
Right.
It's about giving them depth,
Right.
understanding why they do what they do, even if you don't agree with them.
And it's about being mindful of the other people at the table, making sure everyone feels heard and respected, even if their characters are on different sides.
Yeah. In the end, we're all here to have fun and tell a great story together.
Exactly. And Paul has some great tips for handling those potentially tricky situations. He talks about open communication,
Okay.
both in and out of character. If something makes you feel uncomfortable, say something.
Don't bottle it up.
Right. It's better to address those issues than to let them ruin the game for everyone.
Oh.
And remember, the DM is there to help.
They're the referee.
Yeah. They can set some ground rules, help resolve disagreements, make sure everyone is having fun and things stay appropriate.
Because at the end of the day, D&D is about telling a story together.
Absolutely. We're all in this together.
So we've covered a lot.
We have.
Character perspective, motivation, decision-making, how they interact, growth patterns, the importance of being respectful. But how do we use all this stuff in our actual games?
That's the challenge and the fun part. It's about weaving these ideas into the story, creating situations that test the characters' beliefs, make them confront their differences, and ultimately grow and change.
Like what? Give us an example.
Okay, imagine this. You're on a quest.
Okay.
You have to escort this super important artifact to a temple far away.
Sounds important.
It is. But on the way, you come across a group of refugees fleeing a war. They're desperate for help. But helping them would mean delaying the mission, risking the artifact.
That's tough. What do you do?
Exactly. Do you stick to the plan, the mission comes first, or do you help people in need even if it means putting the artifact at risk?
That's a real dilemma.
It is. And this is where those different viewpoints come into play. Maybe the lawful good paladin feels they have to help.
Right.
It's their duty. But the rogue might say the mission is more important.
Practicality versus morality.
Exactly. Maybe the cleric sees it as a chance to spread their faith. And the wizard is worried about the political consequences of getting involved.
Oh, wow.
Everyone has their own take on the situation based on who they are.
Yeah. And as the players discuss what to do, their characters really come to life.
They do. Maybe the paladin and the rogue clash. Their different views lead to an argument. Or maybe the cleric and the wizard find common ground, realizing that helping and being strategic aren't totally opposite things.
I like that.
And as the DM, you guide the story. You present the challenges, you give them choices, and their decisions change how the story unfolds.
The players are writing their own story.
Exactly. You're the architect of the world, but they decide their character's fate.
That's what makes D&D so amazing.
It is.
It's collaborative storytelling. Anything can happen. Characters surprise us. And the journey is just as important as the destination. And speaking of journeys, our deep dive into Paul Bellows' article is wrapping up. But before we go, I want to go back to where we started. That moment at my table. The cleric and the rogue arguing about the spiders. It reminded me that all this stuff we're talking about isn't just theory. It's what makes our game so good.
Yeah, it's what makes the characters and the stories feel real. And makes those times at the table so memorable. You know, thinking back to that cleric and rogue, the best part wasn't about who won the argument. It was how they each struggled with what they believed in.
Right.
Trying to do what they thought was right while working with the group.
Yeah.
And the other players trying to figure out what to do, trying to convince them, or just offering a different way to look at things.
It's a great moment. So here's what I want to leave you with today. The next time you're playing and you face a tough decision, something that challenges your character's beliefs, go for it. Lean into it. Don't shy away from the tension. Explore all the sides of the issue. Let those different viewpoints shape the story.
I agree. Don't be afraid to have those tough conversations. Role play those inner struggles. Let your characters grow and change.
Because that's where the real magic of D&D happens.
Right. In those moments of friction, of challenge, of unexpected teamwork, and maybe even betrayals, that's when D&D becomes something special.
It's about creating a story together, one that's more interesting and complex and ultimately more satisfying because it shows the ups and downs of being human. And a big thanks to Paul Bello, that fine fellow, for giving us the tools and ideas to explore all this. Now we want to hear from you. How do you deal with clashing viewpoints in your games? What are your tricks for creating those tense moments and those moments of growth? Share your stories and ideas in the comments. Tell us about some of your crazy moments at the table. Until next time, may your dice rolls be high and may your characters always find a way forward even when their paths seem to be going in different directions.